My next guest, Rome Leykin, is a double amputee that has caught the imagination of social media, television, and the entire amputee community. Rome is an amputee advocate, competitive marathoner, and participates in countless adaptive sports and activities. Rome has inspired millions with his determination and spirit. It is our pleasure to introduce Mr. Roman Leykin. Hey, Rome, how you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing great. Thank you, Rich. How are you?
Roman, good to see you this morning. I really appreciate you being here. I've been following you as of recent online, and it looks like you're super busy right now. So I do appreciate you carving out an hour. And we are doing this a little bit earlier to accommodate you. I'm glad we were able to do that. And I'm sure you've got a busy day ahead. But fantastic to finally get you on the show and get caught up on all the really exciting things that you're doing. I tend to get a little overwhelmed when I follow you because there's a lot going on with you. Were you always as active as you are now before your amputation? I guess that's
Not even,
that's my first curiosity.
not even close. I mean, I was a web developer living in Brooklyn, working in Manhattan, and it was just living the normal New York City life. You know, you go to the gym every now and then, you go on runs every now and then. I would definitely bike everywhere. I enjoyed active activity, but I was never in a league like I am now.
Okay.
I'm thriving in the competition and the actual competitiveness of it. That's what I'm very excited for.
Yeah, and I find that interesting because there's so many amputees that I talk to that discover their fitness level after an amputation. I'm actually in that group as well. Was a hardworking guy, went to work every day. Yes, I'd hit the gym every once in a while. Or if a friend said, hey, we're doing a 5K this weekend, you want to come along? I could do those things, certainly not in, I guess I would say, in a confident way, but I could still do them. And after my amputation, it was as if that situation spoke to me and said, if you're going to do this in a way, a confident way, a way where you feel as if you're mastering it, you need to get your ass in shape. Like, this is not.
That's exactly how I feel.
This is not going to work for you.
Exactly. Every morning I wake up, I never feel like I'm ready enough. I mean, I still go out and tackle what I have to tackle, specifically to try to get better, to try to work harder today so I don't have to work as hard tomorrow, type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always that progression, that evolution. We're trying to bring our best selves to this lifestyle, this situation, and being inspired by people like yourself, I tend to wake up with that urgency of, okay, what am I doing today to take things up just a little bit to a higher level, to a higher plane? What was the most challenging thing for you? I've watched many of the videos of your progression in getting accustomed to walking with a prosthesis. There's a video that I watched sort of at the beginning of your journey that I found to be really, really transparent and sort of putting yourself in a very vulnerable place. It looked as if you were giving a test drive to some prosthetic legs for the first time, and they weren't.
Yeah, that was my first time.
Yeah, they weren't the Stubbies. They were full on, legs.
My full on sea leg force.
Yeah, exactly. And
that was my first time like freehand walking, basically with nothing and
right.
around. And that's what it led to. And my thinking was, I got to learn this. Best way to do it. I know others are in the online social media sphere who know better than me how better to do it than to put a collection of me trying and then get there feedback. And that's exactly what I did. Well, that was my intention, but it obviously snowballed to something bigger, which is
Yeah.
great. I like it.
Yeah, no, it certainly got a ton of views, obviously myself included. But, I would describe the video as reality. This is what it looks
Yes.
Yeah, this is what it looks like when someone who has lost their legs is trying to walk for the first time. Very often, at least when I speak to able-bodied people, and they'll say, "Oh, you're getting those cool, those cool prosthetics, and you can walk faster, run faster, do all these things." And I'm thinking, how did this perception get built that we just step in to a socket and our lives are transformed in a moment, that suddenly we're Paralympic athletes and we can run and jump and do all these things. And I think, man, Rome's video, if you can catch it, it's, and we'll probably throw a clip of this on the episode as well.
For sure.
It's really, really a dose of harsh reality in that you're trying to simply walk across grass, and I think a couple of other surfaces, but predominantly glass, or not glass, but
Grass, yeah.
grass. Wow, glass. That would
Yeah,
be bad.
no way.
No, we're not going to do that. Please don't do that.
Not yet, at least.
No, you're walking across grass for the sole purpose of knowing you're going to fall, continually fall. You need to be on a softer surface, because putting you on asphalt in that situation is not going to.
It's just too much for me, I think.
And
I didn't have all the necessary arm gear that I clearly would have needed at the time,
Yeah, and you're
It was
stumbling
like, all right,
around.
we got grass here.
Yeah, I mean, you're stumbling around, you're tripping, you're losing your balance, you're spinning around. And to be quite honest, the way I would compare it to is you look like a child learning to walk for the first time. And it's really inspiring in that you don't give up in this video. You just keep going, you keep getting up, you keep pushing yourself, and you end up resting in a place where you can actually walk, tentatively, cautiously, but you're walking. And I think it's important for the general public to understand what that looks like. And moreover, and more importantly, to amputees, what that looks like. Very often, I believe in our community, many newer amputees see the high performers, see the high functioning people, and need to pump the brakes a bit and say, okay, but where does this start? How does this journey begin? What does it look like?
That sounds very familiar. It's exactly how I started off. And when I searched online, all I saw was perfection. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, great, I could do that stuff, but no way can I ever do that stuff, I mean, and then, all right, I just posted what it looked like that first time I tried. And then progress shows. Of course, at the time, I didn't know what I know now, and I would have done things differently. Also, the sockets that I were in were much too big. I definitely should have started off on Stubbies, but I didn't even know about Stubbies for 2 years. I tried to just do sea legs.
Yeah.
And then I learned about Stubbies, and then I primarily focused 8 months straight on Stubbies, and then felt more comfortable.
And the Stubbies help you get your center of gravity going, where you kind of had some confidence?
Absolutely. Teach you how to walk in. I mean, I'm in my Stubbies now.
Yeah. So it's a go-to for someone like yourself, above the knee, double amputee, that would be let's call it in the menu of choices that you choose. I know as an amputee myself, we all continue to use assistive devices, different things that help us do various tasks throughout the day. And I will tell someone that's all very normal, that we employ many different ways to get around.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 6 years into this, and every once in a while around the house, I still use a knee roller. And someone will say, "Oh, wow, you're still using that? Aren't you just in your leg all the time?" And I'll say, "Well, that's, really not how it works. We wear
Right, not necessarily for everybody,
yeah,
right? Depending on their level of amputation and how, like, because mine was from a traumatic accident
right,
and I have so much skin graft, and I didn't have necessarily a revision surgery to add some cushion for the pushing type of thing on my
sure,
left. So when I'm wearing my socket, even for most of the day, it's going to start to pain and I'm going to have to take it off. And yeah, I'm going to be rolling my wheelchair at night. So
yep,
what?
yep,
That's life
yeah."
until I can go see my plastic surgeon and we can have a revision surgery. But my hope is to have them on all day for sure.
And I think that's important to note that there's this evolution that occurs with residual limbs. They're constantly changing. I will talk to certain
Mm-hmm.
amputees that will have a 10-year run where they didn't have a single issue. They're high functioning, they're living their
Mm-hmm.
lives, and then suddenly something develops that puts them in a trajectory for a revision. And
Mm.
it's not necessarily their fault. It's really just has to do with the progression and evolution of a residual limb that is now living in a prosthesis. And that
Right.
can create a number of different things that, let's say, are not biologically normal. I mean, we're taking a
Mm-hmm.
part of our body and we're putting
Right.
it, in whatever fiberglass, carbon fiber, whatever we're jamming it into, and we're trying to perform with those, with those extensions of our limbs, and that can create some, longer term effects that maybe we hadn't anticipated. So
I
that,
learned the hard way.
yeah,
I had to learn that the hard way, but at least, with the skin graft, it's skin graft. So I went last August to Cali on this trip, and I was at this hotel. It was a huge hotel, but I had just gotten my new sockets. They fit much better. They fit great, but they were more snug, and I wore them the whole time, and I walked everywhere. And I guess I had developed a blister on my left
mm,
that opened up, and but when I got home, I didn't even notice it. So it took me a week afterwards, pretty much. I got home, then it got huge and really ugly. And so I just had to go pretty much 6 months without wearing my prosthetics.
yeah.
And only recently, like, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago, did it finally heal up. I finally started going out again. So yeah, I mean, it's just totally off topic, but I can see how people would view that if that would happen to them as regression, right? Like I did my time in short stubbies, then I added a little bit of length, which is how you're supposed to do it, and then I went full sea legs and everything. Then I went to California, was doing great, and then boom, now back in a wheelchair. Oh, and then I finally healed, and I'm back in stubbies. Great. I don't know. I just never look at it as a setback to the learning curve. I know that I don't want it to happen again. So now I'm just a little bit more diligent in how I go about wearing my prosthetics. I don't wear them all day, even though I probably could muscle it. I don't want to have to deal with 6 months out again.
Yeah. I think what you're referring to, I know it's the same thing for me. It's finding this balance, this sort of equilibrium of time in a prosthesis versus time at rest, giving your limb a chance to recover, for your skin to recover. And
Yep.
obviously, when you're doing as many activities as yourself, that has to be a really, really deliberate exercise because, you know, I work a full-time job, go to work every day. I like to get in my workouts during the week as well as the weekend. So in my mind, I'm always sort of kind of micromanaging those recovery times. Okay, if I am going to go to the gym, do I have a half hour, an
Right.
hour to give my residual limb a rest before I'm jumping on a treadmill, or I'm
You
doing.
make sure you plan that out before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If I was to transition from, let's say, walking around the office all day to going on an elliptical. I'm sort of kind of asking for trouble in that situation.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sort
see
of
that.
telling my limb, hey, I don't care how bad this is for you. I'm just gonna
Hmm.
push through it, and that's where
That's exactly
sometimes
what I
the
was thinking.
the skin breakdown can occur, and things of that nature. What currently, with everything that you've got going on, I know you engage just a tremendous amount of different adaptive sports. Your history, if someone was to do a deep dive on you, I mean, man, there's so much that you've engaged as an amputee, which certainly is inspiring. What's the thing that interests you most right now, or what's most challenging for you right now?
Doing more, and doing it more fluidly, like more challenges. Like there's a specific one. I did the Gaylord Gauntlet,
Okay.
and that has a number of obstacles where you're crawling through mud and going over walls and walking through mud and all that. And I remember last year I did it. I could only do half because my socket wasn't fitting right, and I was so exhausted. But to do all of that, would be a feat. So, um, my hardest challenges are what I set for myself, and that's always thinking, okay, I can kind of do A, B, and C, but I can do A, B, and C better. I mean, yeah, D, E, F, sure, whatever. But let's get A, B, and C because they're going to allow me to do D, E, F. Da 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 da.
Sounds
Right.
like sounds like
So,
realistic goals. Sounds like you're wanting to build on
and
your skill set.
especially going back to what you were saying with the letting leg rest, I always kept it so simple. After my accident, like, it was simpler for me to be like, oh, it's darker out now. Let me take the leg off. And now with the time change, it's going to be a little bit harder,
Yeah.
at least on the East Coast.
Well, we
But
all get
that's at least was
that
simple for
spring
me.
fever. That spring fever kicks in, and we're like, "Oh man,
It did. It kicked in yesterday
I
with
got to go
March
outside. I
Madness.
got to do this." I'm the same way. I'm like, I got to ride my bike,
I
man.
know.
It's gonna be nice out. There's gonna be daylight. I
Hmm.
get all
I'm so excited. I'm
psyched up.
so excited, especially for the summer. It's going to be fantastic.
Yep,
I can't wait.
absolutely, absolutely.
And the other thing that I remember you were mentioning is what has been the hardest thing. It's for me, since I'm also a traumatic brain injury survivor, TBI, that has been the mental. Because the physical, I realized right after more or less that video that I can get the physical
Hmm.
aspects of what I need. I can figure out how to walk again. I can figure out how to run again. I can figure out how to do all this. But can I figure out how to communicate again? Can I figure out how to have conversation again? Can I figure out how to live in public without lashing out all the time? And that's only been recent. Because for TBI, a lot of times what happens for TBI, and I got hit right here in the frontal part, is that your dopamine and serotonin levels get way off balance, right? And what happens is you tend to react very negatively and very aggressively to anything that happens to you. And that's what I was
Hmm.
doing, especially those that are closest to me, my mom and dad. Especially, they were telling me the shit that I would say at nurses when I was staying at Burke. Oh God, thank God I don't remember any of that.
Well,
So bad, right? So,
let's talk a little bit about your accident. I wanna use this as a segue, and
mhm.
you've been very forthcoming, very transparent, and to the betterment of, traumatic injury survivors. You've been very offering of your story, and
Mhm.
I admire that, because so often people go through these things, and it's hard for them to talk about it. And I'm not suggesting that at any time it's been easy for you, but
Mhm.
I'm going to let you walk the audience through the day you lost your legs and what occurred, this is certainly out there. Rome's definitely been interviewed. He's been on, you're on Tamron Hall. You've been on, all kinds of different shows and different news pieces. Your story is definitely there, but for the benefit of this audience specifically, if you don't mind, just walk us through that day and what led to your amputation and your brain injury.
Sure. I was February 2nd, 2018. It was a regular Friday morning. I was going to work, living in Brooklyn, working in Manhattan. And what I remember of that day is getting up and getting ready to go to work. And then the next thing I remember much later, about 3 months or so, is waking up in the hospital. And I didn't need a doctor to come in and tell me I didn't have any legs. I knew right away.
What was the time from that day to when you woke up? Was it like the next day you woke up or the same day?
Oh, no, it was, I was a little sketchy about this at first. I thought it was, oh yeah, I just woke up. No, it was like 3 weeks, I think. 3 weeks.
So it was from the time that you had the accident till the time that on the calendar that you sort of woke up, let's call it, you were completely.
I was already 32, I think.
No kidding.
Because this happened a couple weeks before my 32nd birthday. I was 31 at the time, going on 32. I had 2 legs when I was 31, and I had none when I was 32.
You celebrated your birthday unconscious.
Yeah.
Wow.
32 is a wash.
Okay. So that's a remarkable part of the story that I did not know. In my mind, when I've heard you tell the story, and maybe I missed the detail, I just thought, okay, you had this accident, and then maybe the next day you woke up in a hospital.
No, I think at that time I was kind of describing it that way because I wasn't too sure. I didn't want to rehash the details in my parents' minds. Oh, how long was I out when you know?
Yeah. No, I understand. Okay, so you wake up. A doctor doesn't need to tell you.
Right. So what had happened was, I had a seizure. I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was about 14, but I haven't had seizures in years because I'm on medication for it, and I haven't had one since that day, really. But what happened is I had a seizure on a subway platform, and I fell in onto the subway tracks, and then I got run over by the subway, and it hit me pretty much diagonally. Took my legs, smashed me in the head. Didn't give me a skull fracture, but left me with brain damage. Left me with a TBI, and I got scars on because it hit me in my hand too.
Yeah.
And then 3 weeks later, I guess I woke up in the hospital and with plenty of drugs.
Yeah. And that's when I think about all the different amputations that I've heard about and read about, and people that I engage even on a daily basis, your story ranks up there in terms of trauma. I mean, that's a pretty brutal way to to lose your limbs. Is dealing with that situation. And there's this part of me, I guess, in my mind that thinks, like, I'm almost thankful in a way that you don't necessarily remember the pain.
Oh yeah, for sure. Me too. Yeah. I don't have any PTSD or PTS or anything like that. I remember I rode the subway a couple years ago. No problem.
Yeah.
So I just, good thing I don't remember.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, oh man, you mentioned been forthcoming with my story and whatnot. I've been thinking about that a lot. And because if we are in a different class, right? At the same time, we don't just want to go to a bar, have a drink, and then have some random dude. First thing he says is, "Oh, what happened?"
Yeah.
Hey, no, you don't have the right to know. You didn't even ask me my name. It's like, once you get to know me, because I feel personally that I am more than not having legs. things. And if that's all you care about, then I certainly don't care about you.
Yeah, I get it.
But I obviously very much know that it is part of who I am. So there's like a half and half type of thing.
Yeah, and sometimes that messaging, sometimes that form of delivery, it needs to be reined in a bit. And very often when I look at high functioning amputees like yourself, people that come back from trauma, people that live their lives in a way that is inspirational, certainly there's questions. So much of my pursuit in the podcast is about learning what those experiences are like, because I see them as major components of inspiration for the community. And they're very important to get out there. Now, when you're talking about just everyday walks of life, I think I'm in the same camp as you, as people tend to be a little cautious with me. I pick up on that. And usually if I'm have an opportunity to crack a joke or make a reference, well, then the floodgates open and then all the questions start coming at me, you know, really fast. So if I'm in a group of people, I've spent the entire weekend with them, there is not a single mention of the fact that I'm wearing a prosthesis. But the moment I make a joke or the moment I say something about my leg, well, then suddenly everyone is just super curious.
So are you thinking to yourself that you should have made that joke on the first day of the trip? Or are you glad you saved it to the last?
Well,
because I would be thinking to myself, I mean, I immediately like make jokes about it. I try to get a good laugh. Like I remember yesterday when I was picking up my bib for the half marathon, and then we were walking through with the footwear section. I was like, oh, thank God I found the footwear section. And this one of the security guards just burst out laughing. I was like, ah, yeah, just kept on strolling along. So I try to bring a little light when I can.
I think that's a good point.
Otherwise, it's too stuffy.
No, I think you're right. But that's a good point, because there are times that I have come with the jokes right away, and I've noticed an uncomfortable sort of, I don't know,
Laugh, like a response even.
just
That's why
just
a
like
lot of
oh
the
my gosh,
times.
he's going there.
Right, and they have no idea that you're going to go there. Meanwhile, we're just dying for you to go there too.
Yeah.
We've been there for a while now.
Exactly. And I think sometimes the thought of losing a limb, losing a part of your anatomy, it's hard for some people, not all, but it is certainly hard for some individuals to digest. What's that like? What does that feel like? And I think when I notice this the most, I don't really notice it that often when I'm in a prosthesis, but when I was post-op and I was in a wheelchair and I would go places, and I mean, my residual limb is just, as they say, kind of hanging around. And I would notice some pretty extreme reactions to me. It was sort of a spectrum of kind of like sadness in the eyes of some people, but to be quite honest, there was moments where I could see almost like a horrified look on someone's face, where they thought, oh my gosh, what happened? Oh my gosh, what happened to you? Oh my gosh, that's terrible. And now that I'm in a prosthesis, generally most of the time, it seems like that tends to shift when you're in a prosthesis and they look at you.
100%. I was just going to say that. Yeah, it's exactly how I feel. The way that I equated it was, especially when I was making the transition from wheelchair to Stubbies, because you're just as short, if not shorter.
Yeah.
But the way that I thought about it was that no matter what, if people see you in a wheelchair and they're thinking you can be walking, they're going to look down on you. But when people see you walking and they think, wow, you could be doing that in a wheelchair, they're going to look up to you no matter how short you are.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt personally. At least that's how, I don't know if that's how I look, but that's how I felt in my head. Like, oh yeah, I could be in a wheelchair now. Woe is me when I went downtown or out somewhere. But I said, no, screw this. I am absolutely going to go in my Stubbies and do everything. And yeah, people were still looking down. I was, what? But I felt like they were looking with this sense of awe. Like, hey, at least he's not in a wheelchair. And that was enough for me.
Yeah, he's up and moving. So there's something that you had mentioned, and I don't recall the interview or the video blog, but you had spoken at the beginning of your journey, you adopted sort of this copy and paste kind of concept that when you were navigating this new world, this amputee experience, you were just copy and paste, copy and paste. And can you, just because there's so many new amputees that listen to the podcast, I get messages from people who are even pre-op and they're getting ready to lose a limb and they're just trying to get information about how to navigate this very strange world that we live in sometimes. Kind of walk me through that copy and paste sort of methodology that you were using.
Well, now I know a little bit better at the time when it was just like find people out there who don't have both their legs above the knee, do what they do, and then get to where they're at by exactly what they're doing. But everybody's situation is different because of my traumatic injury. My left, my bone is so close to the skin, and that's why there's more pain there. I can't perform certain tasks. I can't do certain movements that those guys can. So, I mean, at first, copy and paste because it's simple to keep in mind. Oh, this person is doing it better than me. They've been at it longer than me. How are they doing it? Start off like that. And then once you feel more comfortable with it, and then you can gear more towards, okay, is how close are our limb losses? Are you from a traumatic accident or is it a scheduled surgery? Because normally scheduled ones, they tend to get it ready for prosthetics as opposed to traumatic accident. Anything can happen.
Yeah, because you're essentially trying to salvage something that's gone through a massive trauma, and it's
right.
It's not dictated by a surgeon's scalpel. It's okay, what are we going to do with what this train did to this young man? How are we going to?
So for me, I don't know, maybe that copy and paste mentality probably wasn't the best because it did lead me to 6 months back in a wheelchair. But in general, I think it was the right mentality for what I needed at the time.
You know, Rome, but isn't that, when you say that 6 months, but isn't that just part of this process? Isn't those types of, sort of S curves that we go through?
Self-learning, sure. Self-learning. I mean, if somebody would have told me before I went on the trip, hey, you got new sockets, don't wear them all day when you go there because they're going to feel more comfortable, but they very well will lead to your skin breakdown. And when I got there, that hotel didn't have any wheelchairs that were free for, I don't know. You have to pay to play on a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to show off my new sockets.
No, I get it.
So yeah, 6 months ago, if I knew.
No, I actually, when I first was able to get into a prep socket, everything, at least what I see very, very much online, is I will watch the journey of certain amputees, new amputees, and everything is, at least in the beginning, it's sort of built around, hey, I'm coming out of surgery, I'm going into rehab, I'm going into physical therapy. I can't wait to get in my leg, or I can't wait to get in my legs. And that becomes the focus, the goal. And social media has a tendency to cheer that on. And then someone gets into a prosthesis, and let's say they're in a prep. So now I'm in a prep socket and it's go, go, go. And I was in that same sort of attitude of, well, now I've got to walk. Like, this is my duty. I have to wear this. I don't care how painful it is. I don't care how new and different this feels. I don't care how much my residual limb is continually reforming just about every day at that point. Because
That's exactly how I felt.
yeah, your limb is so new, and you're just, I mean, you're
The
fluid.
mentality was just go, go, go.
Exactly.
Don't let anybody see you not try to go harder.
Bingo. And I was in that same attitude. And like yourself, skin breakdown, I was in wound care for probably about 6 months. So for me, go, 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 and then a major setback, trying to learn about prosthetics, trying to understand what system, what socket, what options were best for me, my residual limb, my individual set of circumstances, what liners are best for my skin type, how do I manage moisture? How do I manage skincare? All of these things I feel are such a long and winding road that I would tell
100%.
Yeah, I would tell any amputee, it never ends. It never ends.
And no, but also there, I mean, at the same time for me, I feel like there's an end game, right? Not an end game so much, but
I think there's
I know
plateaus.
other amputees that are bilateral above knees that are direct skin to socket, direct, no liners. And that takes years, but it also doesn't take a bunch of skin grafts. I couldn't do that even if I wanted to,
Yeah.
but those kind of things you learn from your prosthetist for sure. But also I knew, like, I didn't start off with direct air suction sockets either, right? My first ones were the liner ones. Then I tried the pins, and it was right around that time that I started finding these people on Instagram that have been at the Baca game for a little longer. I just asked, what are you in there? Oh, they're air suction. And I just went to my prosthetist. Oh, look, this guy's an air suction. I want that. That looks a lot simpler. Just no contraption, nothing. He's like, okay, sounds good. What you want, we're in this together.
Yeah.
And so it's so important to have that teammate chemistry with your prosthetist, I think.
Yeah, and if we develop a curious nature as amputees and we ask questions, and I'm a very curious person, if I see something that I'm thinking, okay, why is that different, or why is that person capable of moving in a way that I feel like I'm struggling per se, I'm usually one to, if I'm there, ask a question. If it's something I see online, I mean, I'm as bold as to just shoot out a message and say, hey, I noticed, you using a particular leg, and I was just curious as to what it is and how has that been going for you? I think that type of mentality.
That's exactly what I was doing in like 2019, 2020, shooting out messages to people on Instagram. And I was lucky enough to get some responses.
Yeah.
The ones that I got just led me to where I am now.
What do you feel for this community? What about this community in terms of opportunities and accessibility issues? What do you see necessary for people like us? What do you want to see change?
Well, when you say us, I mean amputees, or
I mean amputees,
right?
Specifically.
Just straight up amputees.
Yep.
What do I want to see changed?
Where do you see a deficiency? Where do you see a deficiency for this community? What would you like to see change?
I would like to see a little bit more respect come at amputees from the older generation. Like, I look at kids when they see us, nothing but awe and amazement. I love it when kids stare at me. but I do not like it when an adult stares.
Okay,
Adults should know
so
better
perceptions.
than to feel like they're belittling someone.
So perceptions you'd like to see change. And so much of what
It's okay for an adult to act like a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, engage somehow. But I mean, you know the look that I'm talking about. That adult stare, that sideways. And we all know you're looking.
I certainly do. I certainly do. And so much of what I am trying to accomplish in speaking to you and many people like you in this forum is the normalization of our lifestyle, that we are normal. There is no less than,
Mm-hmm.
that we live very, very active, normal lives, and we have to push for opportunities in all aspects of life, whether that's career, relationships, the same kind of opportunities to participate, to have, places where our voices can be heard. I just tend to believe that the amputee community specifically is very underserved, and there are a lot of misperceptions about amputees. And I think that we need to sort of create, I mean, not to get, all hippie on you, but we sort of need to create that light. We need to create that energy that gets out there to show people like you're referring to that our lives are very normal. And
See, I don't even know if normal's the right word anymore.
Well, what word would you use?
I'm unique and special. You want to look at me because you think I'm less than for whatever reason? You go ahead, whatever convinces you. But do I feel normal? No, I feel way above and beyond normal.
Yeah.
I feel
So
much
would you
stronger.
call it your new normal?
Yeah, I could do that. Because I wasn't born this way, and I definitely know somebody who was, and this would be his normal, right? But for me, it's a new normal for sure. I like that better.
Well, normal is it's a broad term, and normal means a lot of things to a lot of different people. It has a lot of different meanings. And
now I see it. I think it might even be harder to be a normal amputee.
Yeah.
Like, what does that even mean to somebody like us? What would be a normal amputee?
I think for me, it's about finding my best self. I think it's about reaching my fullest potential, physically, mentally, spiritually, trying to find a lane that I can thrive in. And like yourself, I do recall moments of those sort of strange social interactions that don't go so well. And I was talking to my girlfriend the other day, and I said, even now I will hesitate to get out of my vehicle sometimes if I know sort of like people are in proximity. I don't want to be on display, especially if I have my leg off and I need to put it on, like on the street, kind of thing. So
I've never done that before.
Yeah.
Oh no, actually, that's not true. That's not true. I try to never take my liner off.
Yeah.
No, the leg sometimes I've had to, like in the gym, sometimes it's come off, put it back on, no big deal. The liner, nah, that I don't like to show yet.
Yeah, there's been times where if I'm on a long, I drive with my left foot, but if I'm taking a long trip, I'll take my prosthesis off, which is on my right leg, and I'll go down to my my liner sock. I mean, I've got my gel liner off, I've got my leg off, and in order for me to depart the vehicle, I can't put my leg on like inside of the driver's seat. I literally have to turn, sort of step.
Right, you gotta open the door.
Yeah. Step touch my left foot to the ground and put on my prosthesis. And there have been times where I have done that, not knowing someone was in proximity. And yeah, that's an interesting reaction. Let me just say that. Especially if it's
somebody told me once, I remember I was going I see legs, and I noticed that this guy was, looking at my legs, and I said, I looked up and I said to him, "Oh, you like what you see?" Like some nonsense I blurted out, and then I was getting ready to go to the elevator, third floor, and he comes up to talk to me, and we had a conversation for a few minutes, and I was so glad that he did. He's a very nice guy, actually, and we just talked, and he said, "Yeah, I used to go into a room and I could light it up, and 99% of the people in there would be laughing, having a great time, and maybe 1% wouldn't like what I had to say, but all I could think about afterwards is that 1%, not about that 99% that actually liked it, but only thing." So his message was, hey, if anybody's staring at you, they're the ones who's got the problems. Yeah. And that's, ever since I heard that, I've kind of tried to take that upon myself, especially when I get out of the car. You're going to look, go ahead. Generally, there's no reason to look back at you, unfortunately, right? But my mentality is, I'm going to give you a reason to look back, to look again, to do a double take.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
That's what keeps me motivated.
What, you said you're getting ready for a half marathon. Did I hear that right?
Sunday.
Oh, on Monday.
Sunday, New York City.
Oh, Sunday. Okay.
Sunday, New York City. Yeah.
So tell me about that.
It'll be my first half. I've done 2 New York City full marathons already. Preface that, but it's on my hand cycle.
Yep.
For Achilles International. So I've done 2 New York City marathons. I'm doing this half marathon Sunday. I'm doing Brooklyn half marathon during the summer. Hand cycling is just something that I gravitate towards. I remember when I was staying at Burke Rehabilitation Facility after my accident, we had an amputee support group meeting there, and one of the guys there, Dominic Romano, who helps run an Achilles International New York City chapter, was there, and he invited me to come to a hand cycling clinic that they were doing at Burke. They have a track up there. So I tried it, and I immediately fell in love with hand cycles because I could do it. And it was just one of those activities that I didn't need to have legs to be great at. So it was an excellent love. And Dom, it was me, my dad, and Dom cracked him joke. It was something of like, at least this way, your legs won't get cold. You don't even have any. And me and my dad had a uproarious laughter. It was just like one of those big belly laughs I haven't had in a while. It was great. And then right after that, I just took to such a love to having the wind back in my hair. I had hair back then. And I never stopped. It was then he told me that they had workouts in Central Park. That's where they bike. And that's where I started to go because I'm still only 45 minutes away from the park. And then I was able to get a grant from the Challenge Athletes Foundation for my own bike. And now I participate in as many hand cycle events as I can.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Now I'm doing marathons. I'm doing Berlin this year. I'm going to be doing New York City again. My main goal is to do the 6-star Abbott 6-star international marathons. So it's New York City, Boston, Chicago, London, Tokyo, and Berlin. Wow. So I got New York City twice. So I'm going to get Berlin down.
That is huge.
And then I'm hoping that maybe by the time I get to the last 2, that I'll be maybe running them.
No, that's phenomenal.
The goal is to run these marathons.
Well, sure, but the level of activity, the level of training, the level of dedication that goes into, because I know quite a few people that are hand cycling, takes a tremendous amount of endurance, a tremendous amount of upper body strength. It is not easy at all.
Mhm.
It's not a cakewalk. So when you're talking about marathon type of participation, that's huge. It's a huge source of inspiration. Um, in wrapping up today, getting your word out and engaging people that want to learn from you and be inspired as I have by you, what's the best way to engage Mr. Rome Leykin?
So for right now, and I will admit, I have been in hibernation mode since my last August, and I had this open wound. My thinking was nobody needs to see another guy in a wheelchair on social media posting dumb stuff. So I didn't post anything until my wound healed up and I felt like I could walk again.
Yep.
And which is why my first post was in Stubbies going into the marathon. But for Instagram, it's Then in Rome, THEN, when in Rome,
Got
but
it.
Then in Rome.
Then in Rome. Got it.
Facebook, it's Rome Leykin. And on TikTok, it's Mr. L Train.
Okay. Fantastic.
And those are all, a lot of those channels are goofy stuff, right? Or you'll find that big video collaboration one that I did. My plan is to very soon start a dedicated YouTube channel to bilateral above knee amputee walking process. Tips and tricks, things like that. I just need somebody else to hold the camera.
Me too. Yeah, there's plenty of content.
Hey, no, you said you had a girlfriend.
Yeah, she works.
Ah,
She doesn't have time to follow me around. That's for sure. She's a busy lady.
well,
No,
why is that? Because you can't earn any money?
well, there's plenty of content out there, and if you search for Rome, he's out there. I mean, there's lots of video, there's lots of different types of content. It was not certainly not difficult for me to discover you, and
I'm glad it wasn't.
no, not at all. And I appreciate what you bring to the community. I appreciate how transparent you are and how offering you are of yourself and the sharing of your journey. Very important to all of us, and you are truly an inspiration. So in closing, I want to thank you for being here today, taking the time. I wish you a beautiful weekend, and hopefully our weather on the East Coast as well in the Midwest here will cooperate, and we can get our spring jam on, as they say. But thank you so much.
Ditto.
I appreciate you being
It
here.
is my pleasure.
And I'm sure we will
It is
be
my
talking
pleasure.
soon.
Thank you so much for having me on too.
No, it's been wonderful, and thanks again. That's going to actually wrap it up for us. My name is Rick Bontkowski. This is the Amp'd UP211 podcast, and I want to wish everyone health and happiness, and we'll see you next time.